Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us, as Sandy said, for our third BSB Bookathon of 2020. Today, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Pamela Stewart. Pamela Stewart is Senior Vice President, National Retail Sales at the Coca-Cola Company, where she has spent 20 years across key senior leadership roles in the areas of global, national, and regional sales operations, finance, food service on premises, and B2B retail business segments. She serves as chair of the board of directors of GLAAD, an LGBTQ+ media advocacy organization, as board member of Coca-Cola's Global Women's Leadership Council, and is co-chair of Mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms's LGBTQ Advisory Council. Beyond her undergraduate and graduate business degrees and executive education certifications, Pam also is a proud graduate of the GCLS Writing Academy and Leadership Atlanta. Pam is also the recipient of numerous honors, including, but not limited to, 2020 Visionary by Consumer Goods Technology, 2020 Woman of Influence in the Food Industry, 2020 UK Diva Media Group's Visible Lesbian Top 100 list, and 2013 Atlanta Business Chronicle's 40 Under 40. Pam is a purpose, family, and impact-driven executive who is governed by two personal missions: to create safe spaces for people to be more comfortable in their own skin, and to stretch people beyond their own perceived potential. She embraces and fosters diversity across all levels, both from her leadership example and her consistent track record of creating thriving, high-performing cultures. We are delighted to have Pamela here today. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you so much, Rad. Thank you so much for joining. I always say this because I mean it sincerely. It's you can be anywhere in the world and you're taking time out of your life to spend time with me. So my hope is that you take at least one thing from the experience, and I take one thing as well. So that will be the quid pro quo that I commit to you over the next hour together. But before I start, I did want to thank Radcliffe for just, I met her, gosh, how long has it been? It's been a while now.
We shouldn't say.
We shouldn't say. But she's always been accessible emotionally and mentally, and I've asked her questions, and I'm a huge fan. For those of you first tuning in, this is your first time, I know that there are people in Australia tuning in, good morning. There are people in UK tuning in, good evening, and people in America tuning in, and good afternoon. I would say this, Rad and I have had wonderful conversations about what's possible as an avid writer and a budding published author. She's always automatically been a mentor. That and Sandy Lowe. Sandy Lowe, for those of you who are experiencing this wonderful event, literary event, Sandy Lowe is absolutely in concert with Rad, one of the masterminds behind that, trying to give you a moment so that you can see yourself. So I hope that you take advantage of it, and this is not the only event that you attend, because there are far more amazing people than I am. So just for the record. And then lastly, Carson Tate. But I'd love to just spend a few minutes with you. And what I figured I'd want to do is a couple of things. The first, I want to make sure that I lay out kind of the things I've learned in the journey and all of the hats that I wear. So Rad shared, I am a corporate executive at a senior level. I am an avid writer. I'm a voracious reader. I'm also a Black woman in America. And my hope is that I take you on the journey, and not only that, being the chair of GLAAD. And so I'll actually cross all of those identities and share things that I've learned that may be helpful. And then hopefully by the end of this, you'll understand the importance of integrating Black authors, Latinx authors, Asian authors, Native American authors, Indigenous people authors into your cycle, into your library. It's so critical because just like you, we want to know that there's more than just one of us. And so that will be the spirit of what I'll take you through over the next 30 minutes. And what I'd love to do is just have a chat at that. We'll have enough time to have a chat back and forth. So as you have questions, please do share those through chat. I commit to you that I will answer them openly and honestly and lovingly. That will be my commitment. Where do we start? Where I'd love to start first is exactly around the work that I do in the community, because a large part of the work that I do in the community is dedicated to the LGBTQ plus community and our allies, I should also add. And so you heard I'm the chair of GLAAD. For those of you unfamiliar with GLAAD, it is the largest media advocacy organization. And that is a real tight term to describe an organization that makes sure that LGBTQ plus people are considered in every mode of media, from books to radio to TV to digital to social, and every complete art, that we are integrated and that our stories are plentiful and that they're told honestly and they're told accurately. And so that is the work we do. We just celebrated our media awards. And so I'll start there, because GLAAD literally is founded on the commitment to accelerate LGBTQ plus acceptance. And in that, what we found most important are a few things. Visibility. So what's really wonderful about books and being able to reach different people pick up books for a few reasons. Escape. They also pick up books in order to see themselves. And so what we've learned at GLAAD is the criticality of visibility. And so for those of you who are readers, you are so crucial to the formula. You are so crucial to the formula. That's why we would dedicate a bookathon, a whole weekend bookathon and literary event to you, is because the formula doesn't work without the reader digesting and absorbing all of the works of these talented writers. And that is the first important part, is visibility. The second part of it is accurate representation. So you'll see there are a couple of items. If you want to hear about LGBTQ plus in the media, there are two items that GLAAD has been a part of, and many countless other talent has been a part of, that have just released. The first is out in TV, out in Visible. So it's Visible out in TV, and it's on Apple Plus TV right now. It is a series documentary, and it really takes the journey of the LGBTQ plus community in media. And so it's compelling. You'll see it in every stream of media there is. We look at everything, gaming, everything. And so that documentary in particular focuses on TV in particular, and it is a pretty powerful one. So Visible out in TV is something I'd recommend. The second, if you haven't seen that yet, is Disclosure on Netflix. And that actually gets into the trans community and gets into the history of the trans community. And so as you start to digest different material on the LGBTQ plus community, just know that there are things out there, and most especially books. And so many people have asked me in different settings, why are books so important? And it's one simple thing. They tell our stories. And the ability to tell our stories honestly and openly and unabashedly is so critical to the rest of the world. There are people on every edge of the planet who may not ever meet a Black person from America, who may not ever meet a bisexual person, who may not ever meet a lesbian, and so on. And so people have to know that there's more than just themselves. And they search inside of books to find their identity, to find connections to their truth. And so for those of you who are readers, thank you for engaging in that journey. And for those of you who are writers, thank you for your fierceness and your courage, because I personally know that it's very difficult to stream your truth into one solid book and have people digest and understand it. And then you become vulnerable because you wait for the reviews. And so to the readers who are absorbing the books, I can tell you things that are important around the books from a media standpoint, from the work that we do with GLAAD. Books have the best chance of becoming movies and becoming, whether that be on streamed networks or content, or whether that be on TV or in studios. What's really important is it's important that you actually review the books, and that when you review the books that you are gentle and you are fair. And someone asked, why would that be important that I'm gentle and fair? I noticed some reviews where someone might pick up a book that's a romance and they do not like romance at all. And instead they love mystery and suspense. So they took this chance and they read a romance novel, and then they review it and they give it 2 stars, and they say, I don't usually read romance. Those are reviews that we don't want on there. Because what I will tell you is our best chance to get those books into stream content like Netflix, like Apple Plus, like Disney Plus, the best chance is through your reviews and your honest feedback of what could be better, or where did you find yourself. And so please understand, when you're doing a review, it's not just that moment that you're doing it, but it matters not just to potential studios or potential publishers, it matters to the artists that they're giving you honest work. So I highly encourage making sure that you write honest reviews. And then the next thing I would encourage in the space of GLAAD is buy the products. So we cannot continue to make content, and we cannot continue to do our work on working with casting agents, studios, Broadway producers to get our stories told if no one comes to see them, period. Doesn't happen. At the end of the day, every agency, every studio, every producer is a for-profit organization, and they are not in the business of creating content that no one wants to see. And the only way they know what people want to see is because you make it known through your reviews and you make it known through your purchases. And so that's so critical. And the third would be engage with the artists. So when someone takes the step to write a book, and there's so many great authors of Bold Strokes books, I'll name several, I'll miss plenty, from Melissa Braden to Georgia Beers, and Georgia has been phenomenal because she's not been just a friend and an author, but she's been a mentor of mine in the writing community. And there's so many, many more. But I would say engage with the artist, because it is such a vulnerable moment to publish, and all that you want is to know that someone was changed or affected in a meaningful way. So I'm glad visibility matters. So use your purchase dollar, use your honest voice, and use your kindness to give back to the artists in the community and read, because this work doesn't get published, it doesn't become a movie without you. The second piece is my other identity is as a corporate executive. So you've been shared, I am a senior vice president at the Coca-Cola Company. I work for the Coca-Cola Company for many reasons, but largely in part because we give back to the community. And in that space, we unabashedly demonstrate our values to the community. And I need brands that do that. We're not a perfect company. There's not a perfect entity out there, but I know with certainty that our heart is in the right place. And as we think about what matters, we are a big marketing company as well, a brand marketing company. And some of the things we think about, just so you know what actually gets into the commercials, we actually create commercials because we are seeing consumers who demand that their voice be heard. That's how we can create commercials. And P&G just did a study recently, Procter & Gamble. They said that images of any community, whether it be LGBTQ+, whether it be females, trust goes up in that community when their image is shown and when people can now understand and see their representation. 10% goes up 10%. Purchase intent by that community goes up 20%. So when I tell you that it's so important that we are seen and that we are heard, it's critical. If you are shopping a brand and that brand is discriminatory towards you, discriminatory towards your community, I urge you to reconsider shopping for that brand. That is, they can't be successful without you. Your dollar has power, your voice has power. So as a corporate executive, I highly encourage you to always just consider that. And what I've learned in this journey as an executive is this. So coming out was a long struggle for me. I wasn't out my whole career in corporate America. In most rooms, I'm the youngest. In most rooms, I'm the darkest. In most rooms, I'm the only female, even still. And people don't know exactly how to take me when I enter that room. And so a couple of things that I've learned in my journey. The first, as I came out finally, I came out when I was a director. I remember in that process of coming out, I was so impatient with people at the time. I was so excited to finally live my truth of loving women that I wanted people to immediately accept me, immediately embrace me. What I've learned in my journey is this. One, the first is that people will always stand up and say what their truth is. And what we will do as human beings is, if it doesn't fit in the construct of what we expected of that individual, we will be impatient, we will be unkind, we will say, no, you're not. We'll take all that time to do that. And I would urge you, as people are listening here, there will be someone in the next few days, in the coming weeks, in the next several months, in the next year, who will come to you and declare who they are. And that, whatever they declare, will be so different than what you had expected, that you will immediately have the impulse to reject it or to reject them. My highest encouragement is lead with love and support them. Believe them, support them, and give them runway to live their best life so that they may actually give you that as well. That's the first. The second thing that I've learned in my journey is be gentle. Be gentle on yourself. If you are in the closet right now, or you haven't declared to someone you love who you are, and it's important who you are, I only remind you, be gentle with that person. Don't have the expectation that people will embrace and digest immediately who you are, what took you a lifetime to come to terms with. So be gentle. I've learned that, and I've taken that through my experiences in the workplace. I've shared through RAD that I have 2 life missions: to create spaces where people feel more comfortable in their own skin, and to stretch people beyond their own perceived potential. And that gentility is so important, because everybody just wants to be significant. They want to love, and they want to matter. And so that's what I've learned from a corporate executive standpoint. As a voracious reader, I've learned that I can't find myself everywhere. I can't. I can't find that gently flawed military princess. Have to pause for that. I can't find that everywhere. And what I've realized is, as a Black woman, it's hard to write about people of color. Because what happens when people write about people of color, the immediate thing they do is tag them urban. Have you noticed that? Anything with Black people, anything with people of color, it's urban. And that's so unfair, because we have families, we love, we cry, we hurt, we hope, we're in pain, we desire. And for whatever reason, when we have our characters there, readers tend to reject reading those characters. And so my encouragement as a voracious reader is, challenge yourself, please, to read more of the variety and the diversity of people who are out there. Because what you'll find is, the story, regardless of what color, what ethnicity, and what nationality, is a human story. And regardless of what genre, it will connect to you. And so don't reject the work that actually has a person of color. In fact, embrace it so that you too can find a voice and a better understanding of how more alike we are than different. That's as a voracious reader. As an avid writer, I've struggled here in candor. As I've shared, Georgia has been amazing. And I should also plug Golden Crown Literary Society, the GCLS Writing Academy has been amazing. That program, quite frankly, has grounded me in my writing and in my craft. Those of you who are out there listening now and you have a writing craft, you have a desire, you were born to write, I encourage you to consider attending the Writing Academy of GCLS. I watch the social media. I know there's work to do. There's work to do by publishers. There's work to do by GCLS. There's work to do by the readers. There's work to do by the writers to be more inclusive. There's more work to do. That's why you can't wait for people to give you that invitation. If you want your story told, you tell the story. And so the GCLS program is an affordable program that gets you engaged with the most prolific LGBTQ plus and ally authors of the whole entire industry. You learn from them. Beth Burnett has been amazing over that, as a director over that with me, and she is a phenomenal human being. Mary Phillips connected to that as well. I actually sponsor a scholarship for it called the Bridge Builder Scholarship, and that is specifically for people of color, writers of color, who don't have the means to actually experience a writing academy. So if we want more diverse writers, I will do my part to make sure that there are more diverse writers and diverse readers. But I'll ask that if there is a story in you and you want understanding of the craft, consider it. The GCLS Writing Academy, it's pretty powerful. So as a Black person, I've struggled though, because I came out of the academy, I was ready to write. At the time, my job is incredibly different in that I stay on the road, no doubt, 5 days a week. And thankfully, that's not the case at the moment as we move through the pandemic. And that's given me real good time. But what it's also given me is just this perplexing situation. I am so nervous to put my picture on the back of my book as a Black person. Because good, bad, or indifferent, I've come to terms with the fact that people may not pick it up because of someone who looks like me is in the float or the sleeve of the book. And that should be nothing I should ever have to deal with or to think about, but it is real. And then I get nervous because my characters are diverse. In one book, I don't have any people of color. In another book, I have different people of color. In another book, it's all people of color. And I get so nervous of someone typifying me as a Black author versus a talented writer, a talented author. And so I'll ask your help. This is where the reader matters. This is where the writer matters. We are creating products for you, products where you can see yourself. And I would encourage you to resist the urge to not pick up that book and instead pick up the book, buy the ebook of people who don't look like you. Because we have voices that are similar than yours, no different, no different. And there should not be a writer who has a talent that has to consider the things I have to consider as a Black writer. The fact that even with my profile, the platform that I'm given, the broad global platform that I'm given, I'm more concerned about sanitizing my image, my picture, so that you might read it and find it without bias. And only you can change that as a reader, and only you can change that as a writer. Which leads me to my final point, and it's, I show up, yes, as a corporate executive, yes, as a GLAAD board chair, yes, as a voracious reader, yes, as an avid writer, and certainly as a Black American. And all of those have their complexities. But I should tell you, the world is not always kind to people who look like me. And I'm so concerned about, especially during these times of us versus them and divisiveness, that there are people and outside forces trying to pull our own LGBTQ plus community apart. They're trying to make one segment of the community matter more than the other, or they're trying to say that one segment of the community doesn't matter. And I would only offer, you know what it feels like when you are on the outside looking in. It is not enough to be a part of the community. It is most important that if you are on the inside of that community, that you bring in others. A friend of mine says it perfectly best. Inclusion is not being invited to the party. That's just the beginning. That's the table stakes. Inclusion is being invited to the party, being asked to dance, and then allowing the person to dance the way that they desire. That is what that is. And if you can create events, heart events like that for others, this world will be a better place. And so, let me end where I began. I come to you as a voracious reader, an avid writer, a glad chair of the board of directors, a graduate of GCLS Writing Academy, a Black American, and a corporate executive. And the only thing that matters in that is that I want to wake up just like you, and I hope that you're inspired as well. I want to wake up just like you to the moment inside of books where I can say, oh, I'm not the only one after all. So please, don't write me off. Thank you.
Wow, Pam, I think we just have to take a moment. I don't know, I feel like I have to take a big breath. That was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
So kind and gracious and well spoken.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, everyone. I'm sure that has generated a lot of comments and questions for Pam Stewart. So please do put them in the Q&A box. Brad, you look like you want to say something.
I do. I was actually going to be quiet during this part, but I can't after listening to Pam, which was incredible.
Thank you.
And it takes a tremendous amount of courage, I think, to sit there and expose who you are on so many levels in so many ways and so deeply. And I'm really appreciative of, and really incredibly impressed. You made so many points that I couldn't even possibly speak to all of them because they're all so meaningful. I did almost applaud, although my sound was off, at one point at the beginning, because in publishing, we've talked so much about the need for diversity to make our works more inclusive. It's literally changed the face of publishing. It almost brought the RWA to its knees, and yet it's rising up in a different fashion. And as an author and as a publisher, I've been listening to these arguments and criticisms and debates and constructive criticism for a couple of years. But what you put first is what almost never gets voiced, and that's the reader. Mm-hmm. And you made the analogy between other forms of media, mm-hmm. that if someone doesn't buy a product, the product won't stay on the shelf.
That's it.
Someone doesn't watch a film, the next one won't be produced. And that's, for me, there's a triad of critical points. There's the author, there's the publisher, and there's the reader. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, without the reader, the other two things can't survive.
Exactly.
And all of us are here, as you said, because we're readers. We came here because we are readers, and that's where we started. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I hope that all of us can support everyone in the community going forward by reading. So thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Rad. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay, so I'm going to just riff off what Rad said for a little bit for our first question, just to give people some time to put their questions in the Q&A box. And my question for you is, as publishers and as authors, how do we reach more diverse readers? Is it a matter of, publishers publish the books and the people will come? Or is there any kind of advice or strategy that you could give in terms of how do we go about reaching the readers that we know need to see themselves on the page and in these books? How do we do that?
Publishing more authors who are people of color, period. I think it starts there, and then giving them a platform. So what's great about Bold Strokes books is you give training, you do initiatives, you do literary events. You're with my friend Linda Riley in the UK, you host things in the UK. What's important is that you're very present and mindful that you're giving a platform to those authors as much as you do on every author. And then I think it's important because you have authors who actually draw a crowd. Leverage those authors to introduce some new authors that they personally believe should have a platform alongside them. I talked about Georgia Beers intentionally because her following is massive. It's massive. And I have no doubt in my mind her generosity and accessibility. If the very moment that I'm published, I know that she would offer me that stage. You have to leverage your best-selling authors to do that. And look at some of the authors that exist. I mean, you think about Rebecca Witherspoon and some of the other authors, Fiona, who are these are amazing writers in your group. And so leverage the best-selling authors to give the platform to people who may be on the outside looking in, because it really is about giving the insider the kind of the anointing of someone on the outside so that people can say, oh, well, if Melissa says that should happen, or if Chris Bryant says that can happen, then we need to make sure we read this. I think it's like that. And then however you do Amazon, Goodread, and your own website that suggests the books, recommends books, make sure that's diverse, that you think about the algorithm, make sure it's diverse, some of the titles that come up. So if they look at one of Rad's books, that, the 5-6 books, you need to have at least 1 or 2 that could be people of color. So give them a platform.
That's a great answer. I think that's certainly possible in terms of the algorithms on the publishers' websites. I only wish that we had control over Amazon's algorithms. That would
know.
make my day.
It's tricky. It's tricky.
So a similar question to this, which sprang to my mind as you were speaking, is kind of the debate between, should authors who are white write multicultural characters, or should they instead use their platform, as you said, to elevate the voices of multicultural authors? Do you have an opinion on
Absolutely
which is best?
Yes, absolutely. And just for the disclaimer, I'm a focus group of one when I say this, but I will tell you that I probably represent many in the community. It's very important that authors, regardless of color, write diverse characters. So absolutely, to the first part, it's very important that those authors who have a broad fan base leverage that platform to introduce new writers who might be people of color, and new writers in general, period, who may not be on the screen just yet. And so both would be a yes. And when the person actually integrates that character, do the research. And it's no different in a lot of ways. So people write about Rome and they've only been there for a weekend. And people write about Kansas and they only have been there or they've heard about it. It's no different. But the beautiful thing about writing about people of color is that we're around you. And so reach out to us and allow us to be a beta reader. I would highly encourage, if you do write and include a person of color, whether Latinx, Native American, whatever, of the community, that you allow them to be a beta reader, so that you can at least get the sensibilities about the rhythm of the language, the rhythm of the dialogue.
That's great advice, because I know there are a lot of authors out there who really struggle with how to write characters who, for whatever reason, are not like themselves, and write it authentically and genuinely. So that's really great advice to get beta readers who are diverse in a lot of ways.
Yes, exactly.
To help with that. Okay, great. I'm going to go to our Q&A panel here.
Wonderful.
See what we have. Ooh, lots of questions about your own writing, which we're going to get to in a minute. Here's a good one. As I noted before, your kindness and compassion really shone through in your keynote, and that really spoke to me. And so this question is, how do you act with kindness and compassion towards those who are hateful and wish harm? How do you do that? That's got to be so tough. Do you have any advice for people?
Yeah, that is the life of a Black American woman. For me, I have no choice but to do that. The collection of all of the acts against me create a mild degree and sometimes a medium degree of trauma. But I will tell you this, kindness is not dependent upon someone else. That is a personal choice. It's not be kind because in the event someone is, be kind. There is no before and after on that. Kindness and being true and authentic to being genuine and gentle has nothing to do with anyone else. That is a directive choice, because a lot of those people who are unkind, they're either misinformed or they're hurting. People usually bash out because they're hurting. They're feeling like their voice is drowning. They're feeling less significant. They're feeling like they may not matter as much as they did. And so they are reacting with emotion. And they have no control over your own set of kindness. Now, let me be clear. Don't put yourself in environments where you have to placate to those people. I would only encourage you to don't allow them to dictate who you will be and what your values will be and who you will be to others. So kindness has nothing to do with anyone else but your choice.
Wow, I love that. Don't let anyone dictate who you're going to be.
Yep.
Okay, someone has asked if you could define what you mean by urban. You were speaking about how the books
You tell me. It's the oddest thing, and this is where I wish I could turn on all the screens of the people of color on the phone. They know what I'm talking about. But urban oftentimes is a code word for Black people are in that book. More than, the 80% of the Black people are in the book. And what it signifies is I won't read that book because I won't see myself in that, because those are Black people in it, or those are Latinx people in it, or those are Asian. It's a moniker for those that it's kind of a category that says that book doesn't represent me, so I'm not going to look at it. And so urban is kind of that blanket all of Black people are all in urban. It's going to be about, whether it be the streets, hip hop, all these things that many of us aren't even relating to, but it's just a blanket term that typifies. Oftentimes in the book genre, a lot of people of color are in that book, so I will purchase that book. It's more of a short term to say that.
Wow, I I didn't even know that, and that's just so confronting. Wow. So our amazing Anne Shade, who I have to give a shout out to, she's been key in the anthology that BSB is publishing next year, In Our Words. So big thanks to Anne Shade for that. She has asked how to get our authors of color and readers who are used to seeing that term, urban and urban-themed books. How do we get our authors and readers to see the value in general fiction and romantic fiction?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I think the more that your writers integrate diverse characters, the more palatable someone who has more diverse characters in the work it would be for a reader. Does that make sense? So let's say, for instance, name one of your authors, anyone, doesn't matter, who's not a person of color, anyone.
Okay, Melissa Braden.
Melissa. So if Melissa adds one or two people of color in her books, and they are like, they're in charge of something, they are very, very monumental to the plot, and she does that just a couple of times, and then the reader sees that. Then when a reader picks up a book from someone like me, who would have literally the same composite of characters, 50% white and 50% people of color, it becomes more digestible for them. Mm-hmm. So I think getting exposure to people of color naturally and organically and mainstream makes all those errors of how people typify works with color. It makes it that much easier, and it prevents people from misunderstanding, I think.
Yeah,
it's just one way, though. It's just one way.
And also props to Melissa Braden, who has done that. If you haven't read Love Like This, please pick it up, because there's some great representation in that book.
My favorite book, though, of hers is Waiting in the Wings. I tell her every time. She knows I tell her every time.
Also read Waiting in the Wings.
I'm plugging Waiting in the Wings.
That was her first book, right? Does that mean it's all downhill from there? Or?
No, it's not.
Okay.
She's only gone up from there, but yes, if you read that, you know you're going to love all of her works, because that was her beginning.
Okay, I like that. Special place in your heart. Okay, we have a bunch of questions about your own writing.
Yes.
Tell us what you're writing on, and tell us about your experience with GCLS Writing Academy and how that's helped you with your writing.
Okay, so I write both business books and romance books. And so I'm actually putting a lot of devotion on the business books, because there's a need for one of the books. When I say business books, it also includes kind of social justice. There's a need for one of the books right now that I'm working on. So I've devoted myself to that. From a romance standpoint, that's my genre. So hence why my mentor at the GCLS Academy was Georgia Beers. That is the work I want to do. That's the work that gives me joy. My business books, they're my callings and teaching. You know, that's, I think I was, I have a word to say on those pieces. So business and romance. And then as it relates to GCLS, it was an amazing experience. So you start to really decompose the writing process at every single level and layer. And you learn plot in a different way. You learn characterization. You learn every single layer. But not only that, I think what's most special about GCLS Writing Academy is that you are assigned a mentor. So a well-published, well-known author. So that's how I get a Georgia Beers. Who lucked up with that, right? And then you get newcomers who are in my class, Anna Burke, and she's already written, 4 books. Compass is one of them. She has so many great books, but she was in my class at GCLS Writing Academy. And what is special about it is and Rad is also one of the mentors. You can have Radcliffe as your mentor in GCLS Academy. And I think that's probably the most special part. So people who are trying to figure out, do I get an MLA or do I get a GCLS Writing Academy? I think that special point of the mentorship is the most special, because the intent is to finish your book by the end of the academy. And so you literally can come out of the academy and be ready to publish. And so for those of you who are really serious about writing, and especially LGBTQ plus content, I highly recommend it. And I'm not, no one's paying me. In fact, I'm paying, right? So I'm a sponsor. So no one's paying me. It was amazing.
That's great. And I can also say as the publisher too, that having a writing academy that focuses on lesfic, if you're a lesfic author, is really important because there are certain elements that differ from mainstream fiction. So having, the writing academy and the mentorship, have those focused on the lesfic and the lesbic community and their tropes and whatnot within that genre is really important. Okay, I have a great question here. How should one give feedback to an author if perhaps they've unintentionally made an error, in their book, in their representation of someone? How would you give feedback to them so that they can take that on for next time?
I actually give it, a lot of people feel compelled to do it on Amazon. I would discourage that. I highly recommend, everyone's on social media. Most authors are all on social media, or they have their own website. So they're on one of the major social media platforms. I would probably send a note and say, I recently purchased your book. I've enjoyed these parts about it. That said, I wanted to call out a couple of things that may be concerning that I want you to consider, and lay it out and be very direct. I've had to do that. I've had to do that to authors and lovingly do it so that they knew. And I think if your heart's in the right place, and this is where you're being gentle will matter, because don't forget that people are artists at the end of the day, and they're trying to give their best work. So if you can remember that and think about the feedback in a way that's constructive but direct so that they understand it, that's the power of it. But I always give it privately. I'll send it on Facebook Messenger, or I'll send it on through Twitter Messenger, and I'll simply tell them so that they can understand and give them enough understanding. So make sure you're able to separate your opinion versus the fact, if that makes sense. So using words like "that sucked," "that was horrible," may not be helpful to the author, but saying, when you use this term, it could be a limiting term for your audience. You may reconsider that. If you want to reach a broader audience, I'll leave it up to you. And those are some of the things I might say to someone.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
One more, I love it.
One more. Who's going to be the lucky last? Okay, tell us about some of your favorite authors, whether they're some of your favorite authors who are authors of color that you would like to use this platform to promote, and just in general, some of your favorites.
And you don't mind if I do it beyond Bold Strokes books?
You're most welcome to.
Fair enough. No,
we have the best, but I understand
you have
there are other great authors out there. So
phenomenal authors. Wow, there are so many. Georgia is one. Georgia Beers, Melissa Braden, Fiona on yours. She's fantastic. She is phenomenal.
amazing.
Harper Bliss, Giselle Fox, and I'm specifically talking about LGBTQ plus writing that I'm talking about. Susan Meyer is amazing. Lynn Ames. Chris Bryan is a great one. Rachel's a great one. Wow, there's so many. But the ones in my rotation, Claire Ashton, Claire Lydon. Claire Ashton is phenomenal. Claire Lydon. I love to read Rebecca's work, Witherspoon. I do. It won't be exhaustive, but those are just to begin with. If there's a place to start, but like I said, there are so many terrific authors. And so let me, if I could, Sandy, if I could share just a couple of last words to.
Yes, absolutely. Go for it.
So thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. I love the conversation. I have to figure out, to those who ask me about my own book, whether or not I come out as my own name. My business books will be in my own name, so I'll let you know when those are out. But I think I may have to write my my romance novels in a different pen name, and I may share that so that you know it very privately, so that someone else can amplify it, just so it doesn't mix with my corporate day job. So more to come on that. But thank you for being with me. Thank you for sharing yourself. Thank you for listening to this little woman here, who's been a voracious reader, an avid writer, a GLAD board chair, a Black American, and a corporate executive. I appreciate you. And thank you so much to Bold Strokes Books, Radcliffe, Sandy, Carson, and the team.
Thank you, Pam. You're far from a little woman. Thanks, everybody. We have our next panel coming up in about 8 minutes. I hope you join us then. And thank you again to Pamela Stewart for this amazing keynote.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.